This is the Fantasy Football 411 podcast. The best place to get the latest 411 on your fantasy football team. Here are your hosts, Alex and Amanda.
Here we are for the first official episode of the Fantasy Football 411 podcast. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Amanda.
And we have a very special episode for you right here. We're going to break down the AFC division team by team. We'll go through the players that they drafted, coaching changes, any injuries that we can remember that are going on, because there's been a lot recently, and their fantasy assets on their team that you should be looking forward to.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on. I'm nervous.
There's a lot of information coming down. So basically how we're going to do this is each of us gets 2 minutes to run through each team, going through it. Shouldn't be too long of an episode. We want to get you on your day, not take up too much of your time, but this is very important fantasy information. I mean, I was doing this on the Later Haters podcast. I carried it over. It helped me every year breaking down each team, remembering which players were where, because I switch teams every year. It's so helpful doing it this way. I hope it helps you out with your fantasy season as well. So when each of us starts out on a team, I'm going to hit the timer.
Is that the timer we're using?
If you want it to be, okay. We could use that sound on the timer for, is that going to be to start it off?
Everyone listening in headphones are like, please.
Yeah, I know. They're like, I lost my hearing. But that's how it's going to go. Each of us get 2 minutes on each team. If you didn't catch the pilot episode of this podcast, it was a disaster. So we were all over the place. We were getting the hang of it. I think we're getting better now. What do you think?
I mean, we'll find out, I guess.
So we'll find out. But this episode should be a little bit more organized. If you're wondering after that episode why you should be listening to us, I mean, really what it comes down to is we listen to a lot of different podcasts. We read a lot of different articles. We're very serious about fantasy football when it comes into the season. Our marriage goes to the side for fantasy football season, and we focus more so
no longer exists.
It just no longer exists during football season. No, just kidding. But either way, we're devoted to this, and as you heard in the pilot episode, I have a record that's pretty braggable, and that's why you should listen.
We know it?
And that's why you should listen to us. Our goal is to be a trustworthy source for you. If we fail at that, then the podcast will probably be no more. Like I said, this episode is covering the AFC division. Next episode, which we're hoping for is next week, we'll cover the NFC division. And then hopefully the episode after that, we'll get into like a mock draft or something, just to give you a heads up on what's going on, because the NFL season's right around the corner. If you listen to the pilot episode, you may already know this. This podcast is available on audio, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, it should be there. And it's also available on video, which you can find on YouTube or on our socials at FanFootball411. If there were any things that we missed or anything, just go to our Twitter. You can find us at FanFootball411. We'll probably post it there. We're going to get better at that too as the season goes on. Like I said, this is all new. But before I babble on any further, let's get into what I guaranteed, the AFC division. First down! Now, for the first team, let's play a little game of rock, paper, scissors, shoot to see who goes first, just to make it fair. Rocks, paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh, wait.
We both did a rock. Okay, let's try again. Ready? Rocks, paper, scissors. All right, I win. She had scissors, I had rock. Luckily, she didn't go rock at the same time. Great minds think alike, but it happens. All right.
You're up then.
First team on the clock is the New York Jets. The New York Jets. Okay.
Wow.
The New York Jets selected QB Zach Wilson with their number 2 overall pick. They followed that with a new offensive lineman with Elijah Vera Tucker. They got wide receiver Elijah Moore, running back Michael Carter, a linebacker with Jamian Sherwood, a couple cornerbacks actually, and actually a few cornerbacks. What am I saying? I'm reading it as I'm talking to you. They got like 3. But hopefully they pan out, because that's a position they're going to need help with this season. They also picked up defensive end Carl Lawson, wide receiver Corey Davis, running back Tevin Coleman, wide receiver Keelan Cole, defensive tackle Sheldon Rankings, defensive end Vinny Curry, safety LaMarcus Joyner, linebacker Gerard Davis, and cornerback Justin Hardy, tight end Tyler Kroft. I mean, you might be wondering why I'm going through all these names, because they matter for fantasy. So they did beef up a little bit. They got rid of Sam Darnold. They traded him to the Panthers. They also don't have Le'Veon Bell this season. They have a new coach, Robert Saleh, came over from defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. If you were paying attention last season, you would see what he did to that defense. He's a defensive-minded coach, and he has a slew of new offensive and defensive weapons, and they've joined because of him. He has a great vibe going forward. He also brought over Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, coach of the Green Bay Packers. They brought over a new defensive coordinator with Jeff Ulbrich, coming off of a 6-year stint with the Falcons, who had all improvement on defense once he took over. A couple of new coaches. I mean, it's a whole new room there. You know, rest in peace to Greg Knapp. He was going to be their assistant head coach, but obviously, if you've been paying attention, he was injured in a biking accident. As for fantasy assets for the Jets, I got 8 seconds left. QB and running back are risky from the start, but you might get some shots at wide receiver Corey Davis, tight end Chris Herndon. You never know. There's going to be some shots there. Go ahead.
You can't talk for 2 minutes. It's not in your blood. You need at least 30 minutes on each team.
I'm just lucky that
it takes you 5 minutes just to say hello.
I'm just lucky that the first team was the New York Jets, because otherwise we'd be screwed.
Lord, do you need like a sip of water after that?
I might. The Buffalo Bills.
The Buffalo Bills. Okay. So in their draft, they got some defensive ends with Greg Russo and Bookie Basham.
Bookie Basham.
Just like to say his name. Offensive tackle Spencer Brown. OT Tommy Doyle. Wide receiver Marquez Stevenson. They got a safety Damar Hamill. Cornerback Rashad Wild Goose. Did I just get all the weird names?
Hold on a sec. Is there a dude with the last name Wild Goose?
Did I just get all the weird names?
Oh, his last name is Wild Goose. I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
Unless you just wrote that in there.
It's a toss-up. I think it's Wild Goose.
You got under a minute left.
And guard Jack Anderson. In post, they picked up QB Mitch Trubisky, Emmanuel Sanders, and Brandon Powell, Matt Breida, and tight end Jacob Hollister. They said peace out to wide receiver John Brown and tight end Lee Smith. Their core coaches have remained the same. We have a little Josh Allen stats for you. So he came in with 37 touchdowns and 10 interceptions with 4,554 yards. A little Devin Singletary had 156 rushes, 687 yards with 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss coming in right behind him with 112 rushes, 481 yards,
seconds.
and 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, awesome. We all love him. 127 receiving, 1,535 yards with 8 touchdowns. Cole Beasley, 4 touchdowns.
Okay, you're out.
Dawson Knox with 3 touchdowns. That was stressful, and I don't like it.
Moving on to the Miami Dolphins with their first pick in the draft. They picked up wide receiver Jalen Waddle. They also got a slew of other weapons like a linebacker with Jalen Phillips. And in the offseason, they picked up wide receiver Robert Foster, backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett, wide receiver Will Fuller, running back Malcolm Brown, cornerback Jason McCourty. Now, this is going to be crazy watching Will Fuller there mixed in with Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle because it's going to be busy. We'll see if Tua can live up to his potential and deliver the ball to them. They did get rid of Kyle Van Noy, who I believe is now on the Patriots. He's a linebacker, running back Matt Breida, and quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is now leading the Washington football team. Xavier Howard, cornerback in Miami, does want out, so I'm curious to see how that plays out. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa has a lot of pressure. He's got a lot to prove. This is the season to do it, though. He has the weapons to do it, so let's see if he can persevere, get through it, and prove to us all what he can do. But wide receiver Devontae Parker's there. He played 14 games last season, 793 yards on 103 targets. But the changes are there. Will Fuller is now in Miami playing with him, which Will Fuller played 11 games last season, had 53 receptions for 879 yards in Houston, which is even more than Devontae Parker on less games. So, I mean, it just, it's a higher output. It's crazy. for the amount of receptions he had. So Jalen Waddle's there, like I said. He's Tyreek-ish, but he's not as fast as Tyreek. So it'll be fun to watch him play that way, you know, especially in Miami where they've only had a few guys that are similar to that. Running back Myles Gaskin's going to lead that running back room, but it is a timeshare there with Malcolm Brown, I believe. But yeah, I'll take a shot at Myles Gaskin late in the draft, though. And tight end Mike Gesicki is a low-end tight end for me. He had 703 yards for 53 receptions last season, but I believe they did pick up a tight end in the draft. Yeah, Hunter Long. So I'm curious to see how they play that going forward.
Moving on to the Patriots. They drafted quarterback Mac Jones.
Who?
As we all know, Mac Jones.
Who?
Okay, that's good enough. They got defensive tackle Christian Barmore, an edge, a running back. In the post, they picked up wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, tight end Jonnu Smith, and tight end Hunter Henry. And they say goodbye to Julian Edelman. Their QB Cam Newton had 8 touchdowns with 10 interceptions. Damian Harris, the running back, 137 rushes, 691 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Sony Michel, who came in with 79 rushes, 449 yards, and 1 touchdown. And their wide receivers, N'Keal
Harry's trying to get out of there. He requested a trade. And Jacoby Myers, he's probably the only fantasy relevant, but
he didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't score 1 touchdown. So we'll find out how that plays out. And that's pretty much the AFC East right there. As you could tell, the Bills are looking like the top tier team there. Obviously, I think they're number 1 in the division, unfortunately for us as Jets fans, but we have a lot to prove as well.
We have a little Josh Allen moment.
If you say so.
Oh,
as long as I own Stephon Diggs on my team, he's throwing to him. That's it. But now we're going to get into the AFC West, starting out with the Chiefs. In the draft, the Chiefs picked up a linebacker, an offensive lineman, a defensive end, a tight end, a wide receiver, and another offensive lineman. They picked up running back Jerick McKinnon and 2 guards, Kyle Long and Joe Thuney, in this offseason. If you remember, they lost the Super Bowl due to the fact that they lacked the weapons on offensive line. So that's why they went for Kyle Long and Joe Thuney. Hopefully that helps them get back there this year. They got rid of running back Damian Williams. He was kind of irrelevant anyways. He wasn't really doing much there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire back and the full running back room that they have. As for fantasy assets on this team, you can't go wrong with Patrick Mahomes. And one thing I got to say about Patrick Mahomes, and she can vouch for me, is before he even entered the draft, I said he's the best QB in this draft class. And everybody was just watching him go. The Jets watched him go. Everybody was just watching him fly by. Look at him. That's all I got to say.
Look at him.
That's all I got to say. So he had a 66% completion percentage last year. So that's pretty impressive on 4,740 yards, 38 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. If you're throwing like that, you're allowed to throw a few interceptions. It's not a big deal. Tyreek Hill obviously is Tyreek Hill. He had 1,276 yards for 15 touchdowns, 135 targets, and 87 receptions. It's ridiculous. Travis Kelce, best tight end in the league. He's looking at 105 receptions last season, 1,416 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he is falling to the second round in most mock drafts that I'm doing now, but he's a decent running back. You figure they're going to be getting touchdowns. They're going to need somebody on the goal line. I only got under 10 seconds. So, yeah, he's good. And obviously wide receiver McCall Hardman if you need a other wide receiver.
Nice finish. So up next, we have the Raiders. So their first pick was offensive lineman Alex Leatherwood. And then they also did pick up some other help for their defensive line. We got Kenyon Drake in the post, along with Willie Snead and Tajay Sharp.
Tarjay. I wonder if he goes shopping at Tarjay.
Never mind. Cut. And Tarjay Sharp, which I actually liked him back in the day.
Tarjay Sharp is awesome.
I liked him back in the day. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, when he goes shopping at Tarjay.
Oh, no. We'll see if he does anything. You're ruining my time again.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. They say goodbye to Nelson Aguilar and Tyrell Williams. Their coaches, they got Gus Bradley, who was the defensive coordinator who served as the Chargers defensive coordinator for the last 4 seasons. So come on, Gus. So they still have Derek Carr, of course, with his 27 touchdowns. Were you going to hit my timer? With 9 interceptions. Josh Jacobs coming in with 273 rushes with 1,065 yards and 12 touchdowns. Devontae Booker has 3 touchdowns. Hunter Renfrow, 2 touchdowns. And we have tight end Darren Waller, who had 9 touchdowns. And yeah, that's all I got. Wrap me up. Done.
All right. They did pick up Kenyon Drake this year, just to finish that up they did pick up Kenyon Drake.
I said that.
You didn't say he rushed for 955 yards last year with Arizona. Who knows what he's going to do with Josh Jacobs in the same room this year with Oakland or Vegas Raiders. We have Oakland in there still. We got to update that. Okay.
Who put Oakland?
You did.
No.
Okay. Well, they were Oakland when I made this, I guess. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, they picked up cornerback Patrick Surtain II, running back Javonte Williams, and a few other weapons, defensive weapons in the draft, as well as this offseason to help their defense. I mean, their cornerback room is probably the best or one of the best in the NFL right now. I mean, Patrick Surtain was supposedly the best cornerback in the draft, and running back Javonte Williams, like I said, falling right behind him, is going to mix up that backfield a little bit with Melvin Gordon there as well. But they did also pick up running back Mike Boone to add to that backfield. They got a couple corners this offseason as well with Ronald Darby, Kyle Fuller, and they did pick up quarterback Teddy Bridgewater because they needed some quarterback help. I was hoping it would be Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson to add some excitement to the NFL. Didn't happen, but oh well. I'm curious to see how it works out down there. Cornerback AJ Bouye left and defensive lineman Jarrell Casey as well. They have a new offensive quality control coach, which I don't have his name. I don't even know why I have this written here, but I guess you could say, Sean McVay was a quality control coach at one point, and look at him now. So maybe this
Look
guy.
at him now.
Look at him now.
Look at him.
Exactly. You never know. So quarterback Teddy Bridgewater last season did surprise people in Carolina by throwing 69% completion percentage. I mean, that's 342 out of 49. 342 out of 492 completions. That's pretty impressive. You wouldn't think that for him. At least I didn't. But he had 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, which sucks, but he did throw for 3,733 yards. I'm really excited to see him in Denver. Melvin Gordon did have 9 touchdowns, 32 receptions last season, but with Javonte Williams there and Mike Boone there, I feel like they're trying to implement something different. Why would they pick both of them up if they didn't have a plan? Now, I'm running out of time, but Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton are decent wide receivers. I put them in the low-end wide receiver 2 category. They had decent seasons, but so far Jerry Jeudy has good chemistry with Teddy in camp, so we'll find out how that works out. And tight end Noah Fant is lacking in value this season. I think he's a low-end tight end 1 at this point.
Chargers are up next. As their first pick, they got offensive lineman Rashawn Slater, a cornerback, a wide receiver Josh Palmer, a tight end Trey McKitty, McKitty, a linebacker, an offensive tackle, another linebacker, running back, safety Mark Webb. And the post, they got Jared Cook, tight end. They said goodbye to cornerback Casey Hayward, running back Kalen Ballage, and tight end Hunter Henry. For coaches, head coach Brandon Staley, who was the defensive coordinator of the Rams. Defensive coordinator is now Ronaldo Hill. Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, who was the Saints quarterback coach from 2016 to 2020. Quarterback Justin Herbert, he had 4,336 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Running back Austin Eckler rushed 116 times, 530 yards, 1 touchdown, received 54 times, and 2 touchdowns with 403 yards. Joshua Kelly rushed 111 times, 354 yards, 2 touchdowns. He received 23 times and 148 yards. Wide receiver Keenan Allen received 100 times, 992 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Wide receiver Mike Williams received 48 times, 756 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
So that was the AFC West. I mean, as you can tell, it breaks down. It's probably going to go Kansas City, Los Angeles Chargers, and then Denver and Vegas are going to battle it out down there. I mean, I'm curious to see. I think I said Oakland Raiders earlier, didn't I? But it's Vegas. Moving on to the AFC North. We are starting out with the Baltimore Ravens, who picked up wide receiver Rashad Bateman with their first pick in the draft to stir up that wide receiver room there in Baltimore. They also got a linebacker, a guard, a defensive back, and a few other weapons. They picked up tight end Josh Oliver this offseason. Wide receiver Sammy Watkins, who's going to be a sneaky play week 1 this year. You watch. I mean, I'm going to pick him up late in the draft if I can, because the coverage in that first game is going to be mixed up, especially with wide receiver Marquise Brown out until further notice with a hamstring injury. So Sammy Watkins, week 1, that's all you need him for. They did get rid of running back Mark Ingram. They had some coaching title changes, like a new tight end coach as well. But, I mean, Mark Andrews is still going to be, a tight end. He's still going off as like the tight end 4 or 5, I believe. So I don't think any of that changes. Quarterback Lamar Jackson played 15 games last season, had 64.4 completion percentage, which isn't the greatest, but you got to understand he's a rushing quarterback. He doesn't pass that much. I mean, if he does, it's just through the slot, or I don't think he really throws bombs. But 2,757 yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. J.K. Dobbins, his lead rusher, running back, 15 games last season he played, 805 yards for 9 touchdowns. He is in a timeshare with Gus Edwards there, but I don't think it's as dramatic as people are making it. I think J.K. Dobbins is a go as a RB1 this season, especially I think like a mid to low end RB1. But then you have obviously Marquise Brown dealing with his injury. He had 8 touchdowns last season for 769 yards. Tight end Mark Andrews, 14 games last season, had 7 touchdowns with 701 yards. And wide receiver Sammy Watkins last year when he was on the Chiefs played 10 games, had 2 touchdowns, 421 yards. Curious to see how it pans out. I know I keep saying curious to see, but I am curious to see. I mean, this is a busy wide receiver room with Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, and all those Miles Boykin. Let's see how they play.
Steelers are up next. They drafted running back Najee Harris. So if you did watch the Hall of Fame game with the Steelers and the Cowboys, you might have seen Najee Harris kind of run past your screen for a hot second. They also got tight end Pat Freiermuth, I guess. They also picked up some defensive help. In the post, they got running back Kalen Ballage. They said goodbye to tight end Vance McDonald and running back James Conner. For coaches, QB coach Matt Canada, who was promoted to offensive coordinator. Their quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, which I feel like I have to say so slow or else I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name.
Why, did you eat a Roethlisberger last night?
It sounds like it. Like I had an upset stomach last night. I must have had a Roethlisberger. Anyways, he had 3,803 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Running back Benny Snell rushed 111 times, 368 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver Deontay Johnson had 88 receiving, 923 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Wide receiver Chase Claypool received 62 times, 873 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, that's a tongue twister, received 97 times, 831 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And tight end Eric Ebron, 56 receiving, 558 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Pretty impressive, and you still have a few seconds. But I will say, Chase Claypool, I thought he got injured the other night in the Hall of Fame game.
It didn't look good.
It was I thought for sure he'd be out, and it like ruined it for me because he was another wide receiver that I was like, he's going to be something great before he got drafted. And what do you know? He's great. I mean, you could.
He's okay.
He's okay. Yeah. So he didn't. I want to brag about.
No, I mean, is he okay or isn't he?
I want to brag about me being right about Chase Claypool, but yeah, he's fine. He actually avoided injury. It's pretty surprising. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, they picked up cornerback Greg Newsome in the draft, as well as a few other defensive weapons this offseason. They picked up defensive end Jadeveon Clowney, tight end Steven Carlson. I mean, there are other weapons in the draft that they got. They did get another wide receiver, another running back, but I just don't think any of them are going to be immediately fantasy relevant. It's really going to be their defense that stands out this year, as they, were constantly growing throughout the past few years. No coaching changes, but quarterback Baker Mayfield needs to step it up this season. I mean, if they're going to be anything, they could be something like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not doing like a Tom Brady Baker comp. I'm more so talking about their defense. They could be, look at what Tampa Bay did throughout the playoffs. I mean, their defense helped them a lot. Like, I don't think they would have made the Super Bowl without their defense the way it was. I mean, look at what they did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl because of the Chiefs' offensive line. Now, the Browns could do something similar to that, especially when they have offensive weapons such as running back Nick Chubb, who played 12 games, had 12 touchdowns last season, with his sidekick Kareem Hunt, who that's like my favorite football duo today out of all the NFL teams is Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I mean, they're both super talented, and it's fun watching them. But wide receiver Odell Beckham is back off of his injury. He only played 7 games last season. He had 3 touchdowns, which the funny thing about it is Jarvis Landry played 15 games and had the same amount of touchdowns. So, dang. Yeah, I know. So I think Odell Beckham is the way to go this season if you're going for a wide receiver there. Jarvis Landry's good, but I just think he's like a wide receiver 2-3 in that range. And then you have Rashard Higgins there too, stealing some shots. But their tight end room is great as well. Austin Hooper and David Njoku, both of them are super talented. They both played 13 games last season, but Austin Hooper had better output, had 46 receptions, 435 yards for 4 touchdowns.
So we have the Bengals, who picked up Jamar Chase, wide receiver, for their first pick. They also picked up some defensive help. They got a kicker in Evan McPherson. Come on.
That's important.
Come on, kicker. Make a name.
I don't even know if I even mentioned kickers.
You will now. They said goodbye to wide receiver Mike Thomas. Or no, they didn't say goodbye. They picked up wide receiver Mike Thomas. They said goodbye to running back Giovanni Bernard and wide receiver AJ Green.
And not to confuse you, that's Mike Thomas from the Rams, not Mike Thomas from the Saints.
Correct. For coaches, running back coach Justin Hill came on board, promoted Troy Walters to wide receiver coach. He was the assistant wide receiver coach. Promoted Brad Crag. Why do I get these names? What?
Cragthorpe.
That's not a real name.
Cragthorpe.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they promoted him to assistant wide receiver coach. He was the offensive assistant before. And they now have Frank Pollock, who is the offensive line coach. QB Joe Burrow. He had 2,688 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Running back Joe Mixon rushed 119 times, 428 yards, 3 touchdowns. He received 21 times with 138 yards with 1 touchdown.
Yeah, but now this season, he's going to be competing with Captain America.
They did pick up Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. So Captain America's now, that's going to be a tough battle. Keep going.
Wide receiver T. Higgins with 67 receiving, 908 yards with 6 touchdowns. And wide receiver Tyler Boyd received 79 times, 841 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Now it's going to be fun to watch them this year without AJ Green there, to mix up that wide receiver core at all. Since they picked up offensive tackle Jackson Carman in the draft, their offensive line is better. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't pick up Elijah Vera Tucker or somebody of that caliber instead of Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow did play together in college, so it's a reuniting type thing. It's going to be fun to watch. And that's the AFC North there. And I think that one, I mean, if I had to guess, it's going to go Baltimore, Pittsburgh, or no, I don't know, with the Browns there. It might go Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. That would be interesting.
I just like the way you said Cleveland.
Yeah. So moving on to the AFC South.
Final countdown.
Keep going. You got to do the whole song now. Sing it like you mean it. All right,
everyone who has their
I changed my mind. I changed my mind. All right. Moving on to the AFC South to close this AFC division out. We are starting out with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who drafted quarterback Trevor Lawrence with his college teammate, running back Travis Etienne, a cornerback, and a few other weapons on the offensive side and the defensive side. They picked up cornerback Shaquille Griffin in this offseason, running back Carlos Hyde, wide receiver Philip Dorsett, wide receiver Marvin Jones, quarterback CJ Beathard from San Fran, and tight end Tim Tebow. You might remember that name. He was a tight end. He was a quarterback. But
so excited.
I know. So excited. I can't wait to see what he can do or what he can't do, because I don't think he can, but we'll find out. I was going to say they got rid of Gardner Minshew because I want them to, because I feel like he has so much potential that as a quarterback one somewhere, and now they bring in this quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, which is great. Like, Trevor's obviously the best quarterback coming out of college this year, but Gardner Minshew's got talent. I hope he goes somewhere where he can prove himself. Same with James Robinson. I mean, they just bring these two guys in and push them back. I didn't expect that. But wide receiver Keelan Cole also left as well. He went to the Jets. But they have a whole new coaching front, just like the Jets. I mean, they have head coach Urban Meyer, who won 2 national championships in 2 different college conferences, which is very impressive. They have a new assistant head coach with Charlie Strong, who worked with Urban in Florida championship season, 38-year college coaching career. I mean, these guys, Darrell Bevel, offensive coordinator, recently served as the Lions interim head coach for 2 seasons, ranking 10th in passing when he was there, as well as a decent rushing attack. I mean, this is going to be super exciting. But either way, I'm running out of time. For fantasy assets, you're looking at Travis Etienne, I think, in the 3rd round. I hope he falls to me somewhere. I want a rookie running back this year. Laviska Shenault is probably the sleeper wide receiver to watch. DJ Chark being the one, though. And Tim Tebow maybe for a tight end, but I'm not going for him in the draft. Trevor Lawrence is in the same boat as Zach Wilson in my book. You got to wait to see what he can do.
Tennessee Titans picked up cornerback Caleb Farley as their first pick. They also didn't have many picks in this draft. They got an OT, a linebacker, a cornerback, a defensive end, a wide receiver with Racy McMath, a safety, and Brady Breeze. Such a cool name, Brady Breeze. In the post, wide receiver Julio Jones, cornerback Janoris Jenkins, and running back Brian Hill. They did say goodbye to cornerback Malcolm Butler, tight end Janu Smith, wide receiver Corey Davis, and wide receiver Adam Humphries. For coaches, they have Todd Downing as their offensive coordinator, who was the tight end coach for the past 2 years with the Vikings. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, who officially has the title after acting as the defensive coordinator last year. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he had 3,819 yards with 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Running back Derrick Henry rushed 378 times, 2,027 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Like, I had to look at that right. I was like, wait, is that right? Yes, 17 touchdowns. He received 19 times, 114 yards. Wide receiver A.J. Brown received 70 times, 1,075 yards, and 11 touchdowns.
No, and I will say Julio with the Falcons last year did have 51 receptions, 3 touchdowns, and 771 yards. But I think he was injured for a few games, so I'm curious to see how that pans out in Tennessee. I mean, that's a busy team. I think they're, getting to be Super Bowl caliber where they're at. Moving on to the Houston Texans. Quarterback Davis Mills was their first pickup in the draft. I think they picked him in the 3rd round with their first pick. They didn't have a lot of picks, but they also got wide receiver Nico Collins, tight end Brevin Jordan, and a few other defensive weapons. But they picked up running back Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead, all 3 running backs they picked up this offseason. Tight end Ryan Izzo might have been there before this year, but I saw him too. I was kind of shocked by that. I thought he was still on the Patriots, but he's there as well. They might be having to get rid of Deshaun Watson. I mean, I don't think he's going to play this year, but they did get rid of J.J. Watt, running back Duke Johnson, tight end Darren Fells. They have a new head coach with David Culley. In the past, he was an NFL coach. As an NFL coach, Culley has captured 10 division titles, made the playoffs in 17 different seasons, and appeared in 6 conference championship games. He ran into a team that needs a lot of work if he's looking to do that again. But they do have quarterback Tyrod Taylor or Deshaun Watson, but I think it's going to be Tyrod for the start, and they're going to probably work in Davis Mills. They're in a rebuild mode. Unfortunate for wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who's trying to, keep his career afloat right now, or Kiki QT. But other than that, you're looking at Nico Collins for a wide receiver there, which we have to see what he can do. I've always been a fan of Phillip Lindsay, so I'm excited to see what he can do there in Houston, but he's with David Johnson there too, so I don't know how that's going to work out.
Final team is the Colts. On their first pick, they got defensive end Kwity Paye. They also didn't have too many picks. They got Carson Wentz in the post, and they said goodbye to Phillip Rivers. For coaches, Scott Milkovich.
Milanovic.
I want to say Milkovich from the Shameless.
I just like John Milkovich, so I kind of like how you said that.
From 2017 to 2019, he was the QB coach for the Jaguars, and then they signed a bunch of new assistants, running back coach, cornerback coaches, tight end coach.
And he's the quarterback coach, right, Scott? Yeah.
He is the quarterback coach. Running back Jonathan Taylor rushed 232 times, 1,169 yards, 11 touchdowns, received 6 times with 299 yards, 1 touchdown. Running back Nyheim Hines rushed 89 times, 380 yards, 3 touchdowns. He received 63 times, 482 yards with 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton received 56 times, 762 yards with 5 touchdowns. And wide receiver Zach Pascal received 44 times, 629 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Now, Jonathan Taylor does lack some value this year that he didn't have last year. I mean, I had him last year. I loved having him second place, all because of Jonathan Taylor probably. But Carson Wentz is out with an injury now for 5 to 6 weeks after his surgery, which I think comes
Poor
in.
Kid.
Yeah, I know. Like, he just gets there. But now, and they had an awesome offensive line when he showed up, but now they're injured as well. But I think his injury time is 5 to 12 weeks, and I think the 6th week is the first week of the season for them against the Seahawks. So we'll have to see if Carson's back on time for that. But I'm thinking week 3 would be a safe play to see Carson coming back. I mean, I wasn't really going for him in drafts anyways, but it does affect that team as a whole. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I was jumping on, couldn't wait. I was even contemplating picking him up in week 4 or at pick 4 in the draft. But now I'm kind of steering away until things clear up a bit with the team. But there you have it. The AFC South, leading the division, I think it's going to be the Tennessee Titans, which is pretty easy to say in that division. And then I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be right behind them, Houston Texans, and then the Colts. But other than that, I mean, that's the AFC breakdown for you. Like I said, next episode, we're going to try to get into the NFC breakdown as well to give you all the updates that happen through the NFC division. And then hopefully the episode after that, we'll get into a mock draft. But we don't want to take any more of your time today. We tried to make this as quick as possible.
Because we were talking really fast to try to get under the 2 minutes.
I know. So we appreciate you listening. Like I said, you can go on and follow us at FanFootball411 on any of the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And you could also subscribe on YouTube or listen to us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yep. And you can watch us on YouTube.
And you can watch us on YouTube as this podcast is available, audio or video.
Thanks for hanging around. We'll catch you next time.